say no to. So we'll have that. But John Wilner, Pac-12 media rights, Kliavkoff under pressure as saga nears conclusion, and presidents express optimism. But reading this, he didn't show like this was going to happen, but it does seem to me, and I'm not trying to pick his brain, we'll get him on, but it does seem to me that there was part of this that, hey, did he in fact misread the room or the information, and that could be something that has created this as well.
Well, I think, I mean, we've talked about it at length. There's no doubt that Kliavkoff misread every step of the way on media rights negotiations and where people were going to go and all of it. And, you know, look, the Big 12, like, that's why it's funny that the Big 12 and the Pac-12 have been so adversarial. Well, fan bases have, but like, because they've gone through the same thing. The Big 12 was just lucky theirs happened first, because if it was reversed and USC and UCLA had gone to the Big 10 and then Texas and OU said, well, hell, that's a
good idea.
Heck of an idea. You know, let's go to the SEC. Then the Big 12 is probably having the same problem right now. But I do think that, you know, they brought him over because, and this mentioned in this article, is like he was with MGM and, you know, had all these different like backgrounds and ideas and things they could do, especially helping their media rights, considering the Pac-12 networks had largely failed. So here you have him in there, and every step of the way, he's kind of made the wrong choice, whether it's been, you know, the fake alliance, which was just Kevin Warren getting to do what he wanted to, you know, not really reading the room on USC and UCLA and then, of course, thinking that, like, well, the Big 12 will just wait for us to get ours done, and then they cut in line, which there is no line. We talked about that last week, and all that kind of, you know, pins him down into the situation they're in right now, where who knows what the interest is. The economy has changed a lot in the last 12 months, which affects, you know, the media partners.
Okay, but let's get to the tone of this compared to, we know about Kliavkoff and the misreading the room, but the tone of this, was it different to you and Craig, either one of you guys?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, like, you know, it allowed more for, you know, well, this is all what we know, but there's a chance that all this is just the public face of it, and behind the scenes is more nerve-wracking.
Yeah, I would say just real quick on your Kliavkoff comments. I mean, definitely the alliance was a misstep. He also was handed a bag of poo from was it Larry Scott. So, you know, we do have to take that in consideration. I do think he deserves maybe a little bit of a break on the USC-UCLA thing, because that's not something that just happens overnight. You know, like that wasn't something that, like, oh, that never would have happened if not for Kliavkoff. But you're right. Like, I mean, the whole, like, not thinking for a second that maybe the Big 12 might jump in front of them. And, I mean, who would have predicted that? I don't know. But, yeah, I mean, yeah, like some of it definitely on him, some of it not. Regardless, I mean, they still seem to be positive overall. I think from the tone of the article, Wilner's hedging his bets a little bit. And, I mean, just, you know, probably because he doesn't know. I mean, I don't think that he quite knows. I think that, you know, one day you wake up and you feel like maybe you're hearing that it's a done deal and that it's absolutely going to be this number or greater or whatever channel it's going to be on, and feeling like things are going good. And maybe, you know, a couple days later, it's not quite what you heard, or maybe you're hearing it differently from somebody else. There's a lot of people involved. So I think he's kind of leaving everything open to possibility. So hedging his bets maybe a little bit, but I think that's because a guy who's pretty plugged in doesn't know. And I think, you know, of the people who cover the Pac-12, I think it was the other John that was far more emphatic in his recent reporting about, you know, what it could look like and what it could be and those types of things, and was the one that was really pointing towards today as a day where the dominoes could fall, as you said and as he said. I forgot about that line. So, yeah, I think he's somebody who's wondering, like the rest of us, John Wilner, what's going to happen. And there's reasons he's hearing to believe that it could be positive, but there's also reasons that he's hearing that, you know, maybe not so much. And so, yeah, I think we're just all along for the ride.
Well, and so there we are with that. And so there may be, today may come and go without really anything new, other than the fact that there's a meeting, and they hopefully will at least be able to get some more information. We'll see. A lot of presidents and others talked last week, and that was brought up by John in his Wilner hotline, and said, in fact, one of the comments he made about Robbins, who's the president at Arizona, last week, those sounds of silence morphed into Robert Robbins' 2023 media tour, a series of on-the-record interviews by Arizona's president with both regional and national outlets. His overall tone was optimistic. He needed to see the final offer before making a decision on Arizona's conference affiliation, but expressed confidence in the outcome. And he said, there's no question Kliavkoff knew that Robbins was going to be saying something, was briefed on the latest news from the negotiations before he spoke to the media. If not the specifics, then at least the general tone and trajectory. So the question is, what is going to happen? No different than the question was 9 months ago, what is going to happen? But there's no way we would be waiting 9 months from now. This has to come sooner or later, and it may not be until sometime in the month of April.
Yeah, and if that happens, that happens. And I'll reiterate, it's not so much waiting to watch the pack die or, grab another lifeline or anything like that. I mean, it's the implications that this has as well. And it's just an interesting topic. I think you can find plenty of people just discussing realignment without getting into the choosing of sides. They just find it to be a fascinating thing because of, again, implications that it can have along the way. I do think what was interesting to see from him was, for example, he commented on, gosh, I just had it. He mentioned, the LA schools and how that was unexpected, and yet I've heard from people on the other side that, like, no, they totally knew that was going to happen. Or no, that wasn't a surprise at all. They had been rattling the cage. But here's John Wilner, who I'm supposed to believe is the guy, right? And he's saying that it was unexpected, but others disagree. He's also asking a lot of the questions that everybody else is asking, even though we're apparently stupid for asking them, whether that be the amount of streaming, whether that be amount of money, whether that's enough to settle down feelings. So I appreciate that he can look at it and view it not as like, well, if I don't look at this positively, then I'm anti this, and if I don't look at it negatively, then I'm pro that. It's like, no, he's asking the exact same things we're asking. He's interested just like we are in the length and the GOR and the money and the exposure, and just like we're wondering, he's wondering how those things are going to matter in the long run, because you can say what you want to about whatever's going on behind the scenes, and again, I think we all agree that this just stays pat ultimately. But if enough things do add up, then yeah, there is, I think, no matter how positive you are, if that money's low, that exposure's not great, those things add up. But he's wondering like all of us, so I appreciate that.
One of the things that I thought could be of interest is we hear about Apple Plus and we hear about Amazon. What happens if, in fact, Fox right now is not a part of it, but they could always jump back in it? But what happens if ESPN decides they're not interested?
In especially in being the linear partner, then they might have to do the all streaming thing, which I thought about this today, especially after I read Jim's column that you sent. So I'm an Apple TV Plus subscriber because I like several of the things that are on it, and it's relatively cheap. So I have it. But I don't know if that would – I mean, if you're a Pac-12 fan, you're going to get it. So they've guaranteed themselves at least that the Pac-12 fans will get it, and it's an easier way to get and watch the networks than it would have been on their previous, incarnation of the networks that never got distributorship. But if I'm an Apple TV Plus subscriber and there's not a particular Pac-12 game I'm going to watch, am I going to go find it? That number better be pretty high for me to forget about the exposure. So the number wouldn't, to me, to not have a linear TV partner right now, would have to not only beat the Big 12, but be a little bit significant, not like $3, $4, $5 million, like maybe $8, $9 million more than the Big 12. That way I could say, well, like, yes, we're not going to have the exposure that they will on linear television, but we're getting more money, and there's 10 or 12 of us now, depending on expansion, and that will make me feel better. So I don't know.
All right, there's that, and